Have you ever noticed how the harder you chase something, the further it seems to slip away? The more you reach for connection, the more alone you feel. The more you seek to be seen, the more invisible you become. Perhaps tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you're still carrying that weight, the energy of wanting, of waiting, of wondering why the things you desire most seem to dance just beyond your reach. But what if the answer isn't out there at all? Chasing is a vibration born of lack. Anything born of lack carries a signal that gradually drives it away from you. Have you ever felt that the more you long for something, the more it eludes you? The more you wait for a message, the less it arrives. The more you long for others to see and understand you, the more you feel forgotten. This does not happen because you are not worthy, nor is it due to cruel fate. It happens because the energy you emit, silent yet powerful, says, I lack. I need. I am not enough without that. Even if you smile, stay calm, or try to appear okay, your energy field is always more honest than your words, and it creates a corresponding response in reality. You do not attract with thoughts, you attract with frequency. And as long as your energy is running after and clinging, the very moment you are unconsciously pushing the thing you desire away. This is not a story of desire. It is a story of vibration. Only when you stop seeking, stop controlling, and stop asserting that you are lacking, do you return to the center, where you no longer need to attract, but begin to shine. Number 1. Theory of consciousness and vibration. Some vibrations need not be heard, yet they change an entire room. A person enters without saying anything, without doing anything special, yet all eyes turn to them. Conversely, there are people who, even at their best effort, make others feel heavy or sense that something is off. This is not found in words. This is the energy field, and the energy field never lies. Jung did not call it vibrating energy in the modern spiritual sense, but he understood deeply that consciousness, both conscious and unconscious, is the living magnetic field. When you emit vibrations born of lack, from a place filled with craving, control, and anxiety, you are sending a signal that says, I do not have. I am afraid. I am not enough. And the universe, along with those around you, responds not to what you say, but to what you are. In analytical psychology, Carl Jung explained that every longing issued from a wounded ego activates the shadow within. The shadow is not only the negative part, but everything you refuse, push away, or dare not acknowledge in yourself. When you pursue love out of fear of loneliness, you pursue from your shadow the belief that you cannot be whole on your own. When you pursue success because you feel you lack worth, you act from an inner crack rather than authentic passion. Jung called this projection the phenomenon in which the unconscious mind casts unintegrated parts of ourselves onto the outside world. In Ion Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, he wrote that projections change the world into a replica of one's unknown face. Thursday, the world does not reflect reality, but mirrors the unseen wounds within us. Imagine you step into a new relationship. On the surface, you appear confident, joyful, and I need nothing. But deep inside, you check your phone constantly, waiting for every message, imagining countless scenarios if the other does not respond as hoped. This is a typical vibration born of lack. Even if you do not speak, that energy still radiates, and the other person senses it. Not through words, but through the tension in your gaze, the rhythm of your heart. the silence between words. This makes them gradually withdraw, not because they dislike you, but because they do not wish to be drawn into an energy that demands to be filled. Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Until you face the true motivation beneath your actions, you will continue to be led by it, mistaking it for destiny. Many people try to attract what they want. They read law of attraction books, practice affirmations, and imagine an ideal future. But they fail to realize that it is not what you want that is attracted, but what you are. If your foundational energy emits from fear, from a sense of lack, from insecurity about yourself, you are simply sending a clear signal that I do not have it. I am not enough. And by the law of frequency, you will attract experiences that reinforce that reality. Indifferent people, missed opportunities, relationships that mirror your self-doubt. Jung drew a clear distinction between the ego and the soul. The ego is the part that wants to control, plan, possess, and prove. The soul, on the other hand, is the part that needs no reason to be present. When you act from the ego, you always feel compelled to do something to be chosen, to be kept, to avoid loss. But when you live from the soul, you no longer need to pursue, because you recognize I am myself, and if and what is meant to stay will stay. In the undiscovered self, Jung said that the soul demands your truth, not your loyalty to conformity. The soul does not need you to strive to please others. It needs you to have the courage to live in alignment with your inner truth. Vibrations born of lack are ultimately vibrations of fear, of abandonment, of unhealed memories, of an inner child still waiting for someone to come and say, you are worthy, you are enough. But no one can bring that from the outside if you have not first sent that signal from within yourself. As Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. You no longer need to search. What you are seeking is not ahead, but in the frequency you emit with each moment. And if you shift that frequency from pleading to presence, from expectation to steadiness, from anxiety to trust, then you will no longer have to chase. Everything will find you, not because you did it right, but because you have become the right person. Number 2, Story 1, Carla. And that is the profound truth Jung wants us to understand. You do not attract by what you wish for, you attract by what you are. When the energy within you continues to emit a signal of lack, of waiting, of the fear of being abandoned, then the external reality will forever be a mirror reflecting that vibration. And to see how this operates, not only in theory, but in real life, hear the story of Carla, a vivid and authentic example of what Jung called the psychic wound that cries louder than words. Carla is an intelligent, independent woman who is highly self-aware. At age 34, she experienced a painful breakup with the man who had been her whole world. Afterwards, she did not flee from the pain. On the contrary, Carla embarked on a model healing journey, reading books, meditating, journaling, taking therapy courses, caring for herself, and rebuilding her self-esteem. On the outside, Carla appeared to be the ideal of a woman who had overcome her past. But there was one thing she could not explain. Each time she began a new connection, even if it was gentle and promising, everything always fell into the same orbit. The other person gradually became distant. The relationship grew fragile, and in the end it broke without any clear reason. This is where things became clearer. not through reason, but through a moment of profound awakening in an intensive therapy session. When the therapist looked straight into her eyes and said, "Your energy is not waiting for love. It is begging for confirmation." That remark struck the very core that all of Carla's healing efforts had missed. She had not truly let go. She had only done everything to prove that she was worthy of love. Although her exterior had changed, her inner energy still clung, not to a specific person, but to a pattern. The person who would come to heal me, the person who would confirm that I am enough. Carla did not live in the presence of her new connections. She lived in the unconscious expectation that this time, someone would act differently so that she would no longer feel that she had failed in love. She was not loving, she was waiting to be rescued. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." We reach enlightenment not by imagining light, but by having the courage to face the darkness within ourselves. And the darkness that Carla had to confront was not her ex or her painful past, but the unconscious belief that she would not be whole unless chosen by someone else. That explains why all of her positive healing actions were still guided by a begging energy. It was not genuine autonomy. It was disguised control, a form of, "I will love myself as long as someone confirms that I am lovable." But energy does not operate under conditions. Your field of vibration does not care about the checklist you have completed. It only responds to the signal of who you truly are inside. And from then on, Carla's reality continuously reflected a single lesson. When you demand confirmation, you are emitting a vibration that I do not have enough. And the universe, as Jung pointed out, does not answer what you want, but answers you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But if you still need someone else to confirm that, you are not truly yourself. You are only a shadow seeking an image. After that therapy session, Carla did not change her strategy to be loved. She changed her mindset. She did not force herself to stop feeling. She began to observe her impulses when meeting someone new. Each time she sensed herself expecting too early, she did not blame herself but asked, "Am I loving this person, or am I waiting for them to confirm that I am enough?" And this self-awareness was the turning point of her vibration. Not loving less, not moving slower, but loving from a place of fullness. From then on, her energy no longer sent a begging signal. She was no longer on the frequency of, "Choose me so that I can be me." She had chosen herself. And when one chooses oneself, the world is no longer a place to be saved, but a place to live, to share, to shine. No chasing, no waiting, no proving, simply being present. Because, as Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The most terrifying thing is not rejection, but daring to accept oneself fully. And when you do that, you no longer need anyone to confirm anything. You become a field of fullness where no signal of lack resides, and that is why all you have ever sought begins to find you. Number 3. Mechanism of the inner world and Jung's analysis. When Carla stopped demanding confirmation from the outside, she not only transformed her way of loving, but also entered a deeper phase. She confronted the inner mechanism truly governing her life. Because all of our experiences, whether connections, disappointments, or repeating emotional loops, originate from the psychological energy field emitted from the deepest layer of the self. In analytical psychology, Jung distinguished very clearly between desire that issues from the ego and the call of the self. When the ego longs for something not out of love, but out of emptiness, it unconsciously activates the unhealed, unintegrated parts of the mind, the parts Jung called the shadow. These parts do not vanish just because you think more positively. Instead, the more they are suppressed, the more they manipulate the energy you emit. The more you force yourself to become what you are not, the more you become an opposite shadow of yourself, not because you are fake, but because you have not faced where desire begins, which is lack. Try stopping and thinking about yourself. Have you ever entered a room and sensed something was off about someone, even though they were smiling brightly? Have you ever heard someone claim they have moved on, but still felt a muffled sadness emanating from them? This is the phenomenon of energy, not something mystical, but a living vibration arising from a psychological mechanism. Jung believed consciousness is not only words or thoughts, but also emotionally charged images. Images accumulated in the unconscious and broadcast outward like a frequency. In Man and His Symbols, he wrote that the psyche consists essentially of images. It is a self-regulating system that expresses itself in images. Drop a like in the comments if you have ever sensed someone's energy simply by their presence. Listen on, because what you are about to realize may change how you connect with yourself. This explains why even if you say "I am fine," "I have let go," or "I feel confident," others will still sense it if the true vibration inside you is trembling. The ego may lie, but energy does not. The danger is when the ego acts from fear but attaches a positive label, such as "I am just trying" or "I am in love," then the shadow becomes truly powerful. As Jung warns, the acceptance of the shadow side of our nature is a moral problem. It is the very essence of individuation. Only when you dare to look at the vibration arising from darkness, control, fear, insecurity, do you begin the journey of individuation. A journey back to the whole self, where no part needs hiding. Individuation, according to Jung, is not becoming a better version of oneself, but returning to the center of the self, where all the fragments inside you are seen and reunited. When you still emit a vibration born of lack, you operate from the unhealed ego. But when you live from the center, from the self, you no longer need control, persuasion, or pursuit. You simply exist with inner richness. Then you no longer emit the signal to come to me so that I can feel complete, but you emit a silent field: I am myself, and I am enough. Are you living from the center of your being, or are you sending out a signal begging someone to confirm you are worthy? Share in the comments, because that awareness is the first step to shifting the vibration you carry. There is a subtle truth Jung recognized early on. Others do not love you for what you do. They are drawn by the energy field you do not realize you are radiating. If that field issues from unintegrated darkness, you will attract people who activate your wound, not to punish you, but to invite you to look more deeply at what needs healing. In Ion, Jung wrote that the self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both consciousness and the unconscious. The self is not only the center, but the totality, embracing both the light and the darkness within you. So if you ever wondered why you keep meeting the same type of person, or why you feel misunderstood even though you tried so hard, The answer may lie in the frequency you emit, not in what you think about yourself. Only when you dare to turn inward, not to hide or fix, but to integrate every part of yourself, will you enter the state Jung called the wholeness of the self, the state where you no longer need to send a begging signal because you are transmitting the truth. Are you ready to return to the center of yourself? If so, comment a single word: present. Being fully present is what makes your energy magnetic. No need to seek, and yet you will attract everything that truly resonates with you. Number 4. Story 2. Natalia. After understanding how energy emitted from a wounded ego can unconsciously attract repeating experiences, we recognize an even more important truth. Merely understanding is not liberation. The intellect may declare, "I have let go." But if the energy inside still emits a signal of clinging, you remain on the same frequency, and the world will continue to mirror that, no matter how many books you read, videos you watch, or even when you proclaim you have healed. Natalia's story provides a clear and poignant illustration of this. Natalia, now 40, is a strong, deep woman who survived a toxic relationship that nearly drained her soul. After the breakup, she embarked on a journey of rebuilding herself. She studied self-love, attended therapy, practiced meditation, journaled, and even started a small blog to share her recovery. Everyone around her saw a woman who had overcome her pain, and Natalia believed it too. She felt confident, at peace, ready for a new connection until a man appeared. At first, Natalia maintained her balance, but just days into their initial conversations, she found herself checking her phone more often, analyzing every message, guessing what he truly thought. Each time he went silent, even a little longer, a wave of anxiety washed over her. She did not voice it or act rashly, but her mind spiraled. If he does not reply, what does that mean? Did I do something wrong? Will this end the same way as before? In a pivotal therapy session, her therapist quietly observed and said, "Your mind has let go, but your energy is still holding on." Natalia was stunned. She had never imagined she could be faking it to herself. But the truth was that all her efforts, the meditation, the sharing, the writing, stemmed from a drive not to be the same as before, to guarantee that next time would differ. Deep inside, her energy still sent the old message. I need something outside to make me feel safe, to ensure I will not be hurt again. Carl Jung wrote in the Red Book, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. No awakening occurs without passing through pain." Natalia was not wrong to believe she had let go. She had simply not reached the end of the truth. Her deepest fear was still quietly directing her energy. Unprocessed energy acts like a script that repeats in various forms. You change partners, environments, and behaviors, yet you draw experiences with the same core: abandonment, misunderstanding, insufficiency. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, the unconscious urge to relive an unresolved experience. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote, "The patient can only get well when he begins to see the contents of the unconscious and assimilate them into the total personality." Healing only happens when you dare to face the unconscious contents and integrate them into your whole being. The fact is, your vibration always speaks before your words. Others do not withdraw because you lack something specifically, but because they unconsciously sense an energy field demanding to be filled. They feel a burden you may not even recognize that you carry. Natalia did not utter a single plea, yet her energy field issued a clear request. Give me certainty. Ensure I will not be hurt again. When that energy emerges, love cannot flow freely. It becomes distorted, burdened with a responsibility to heal that no one but you can bear. If you find yourself wondering, why do I keep attracting the same type of person? Perhaps it is time to stop questioning the outside world and instead listen to yourself. Ask, what am I emitting that I dare not admit? Connection cannot grow on the foundation of energy bent by fear. The more you seek safety in others, the further you drift from your center. And the world, as Jung said, does not respond to what you want, but to what you are. Until you change that frequency, you will star in the same drama under a different title. The good news is that the moment you begin to recognize this, as Natalia did, you have already started to shift your vibration. And that alone, without anyone's confirmation, is enough to transform your entire story. Number 5. The difference between control and surrender. Imagine a moment you sigh, looking at your phone, and think you will not text anymore. You are fine. Minutes later, you secretly unlock your phone, waiting for a message or a sign that something to prove you are still cared for. On the surface, you tell yourself you are letting go, but inside your entire nervous system is on high alert. That is not peace. That is control, disguised as silence. At that intersection between mature behavior and lingering clinging energy, begins a hard-to-swallow lesson that leads to deep transformation. Control is not strength. It is a survival reflex of an unhealed ego. Natalia recognized this not through words, but through experiencing it again in her body, in her energy, in how she faced uncertainty. That is when the door to the core distinction between control and surrender opened, not by knowledge, but by vibrational experience. We often equate control with power, action, and doing something to ensure nothing falls apart. In truth, control is a contraction of consciousness fear wrapped in a reasonable explanation, the ego trying to manage uncertainty through analysis, speculation, intervention, and at times, feigned indifference. Jung taught that the ego seeks to control what the soul has not yet integrated. That mask of logic makes control a wound. You do not act from strength. You act from fear, unwilling to admit it. Imagine beginning a new relationship and the other person texts less for a day, so you feel compelled to do something. You send a message first. Do you stay silent to see if they notice why? Will you ask indirect questions to guess their state of mind? None of these actions are wrong in themselves, but consider the inner state driving these behaviors. If it stems from an inability to bear uncertainty, then you are not connecting, you are controlling. Jung spoke not only about behavior, but about the motive beneath it. He wrote that when an inner situation remains unconscious, it appears outside as fate. If you fail to recognize that you are governed by fear of losing control, you will continue to attract situations that force you to control yourself until you either exhaust yourself or awaken. You either live from your center or steer everything from the fear of abandonment. Recognizing this is the first step to letting go of awareness rather than from fatigue. Surrender is not standing still, waiting for a miracle. Surrender is the strongest act of a mind at rest in itself. It is when you no longer need to force reality to follow an ego script. It is when you no longer need to check, control, steer, or edit reality, because you trust that what belongs to you arrives without effort, and what does not only brings pain when held. A vivid illustration is the healing journey of Lorena. When she began a new relationship, everything felt harmonious at first, but gradually, with each time her partner became silent, Lorena started analyzing every punctuation, every pause, and every word choice. She did not blame or show it outwardly, yet inside, she was silently squeezing herself and her partner with expectations and worry. Inevitably, the energy between them began to withdraw. When she asked why, her partner could only say something felt heavy without any clear cause. Lorena realized it was not that her partner was wrong, but that she still operated from a place of control, disguised as wanting to understand. Jung did not teach letting go as a mere technique, but as a process of inner maturity. He taught that surrender is not weakness, but it is the courage to stop waging war against yourself. It is when you no longer need certainty to feel safe, need another's reaction to feel loved, and no longer need control to protect yourself from abandonment. If you live in the energy of clinging to avoid loss, remember that control does not keep you safe. It only keeps you away from real living. Sometimes the most essential step is not knowing the next move, but daring to stand still and do nothing to feel what you still cling to out of fear rather than love. You may have seen yourself controlling under the guise of seeking reassurance that you are not alone. Now you have another choice. Share the phrase "I am letting go" if you choose to step out of control energy and into a magnetic state where life comes without being pulled only by trust. Number 6, the power of presence. But surrender does not mean you disappear. Not controlling does not mean you become passive. This brings us to a dimension few truly understand, what Carl Jung called the true center of spiritual life, the power of presence. If control is action born of fear, presence is a holistic being not arising from doing, but from an inner state of grounded calm that demands nothing from the world. It is the energy that does not chase, does not defend, does not seek affirmation. It simply is. Vibrational presence is not measured by how long you meditate each day or how many seconds you can stay silent. It is the living energy field you emit when your mind, emotions, and body no longer race toward the future or recoil into the past. It is when you are truly here, not occupied by worry, expectation, or hidden fear. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that freedom stretches only as far as the limits of our consciousness. If you are not fully present, you still live within the unconscious sphere of control, where your energy reacts instead of choosing. Think of someone you have met whose mere entrance into a room brought you comfort, safety, or renewed vitality. They may not be strikingly handsome, talkative, or eager to prove anything, yet they show up fully. That is the power of presence. No showmanship, no tactics, yet the entire space around them shifts. Because when you are present with yourself, you need nothing to make an impression. You are the impression. If you are still reading, pause for a moment, put down your phone, and close your eyes for 5 seconds. Notice whether you are here with me, or if your body is seated while your mind has wandered elsewhere. This is a small test of presence. If you realize you are not fully here, you are not alone, because presence does not come from intention. It comes from practice. Jung described the process of returning to the center of the self, individuation, as a journey through layer upon layer of illusion, wounds, and unconscious reflexes, until nothing remains but unconditional presence. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote that the self is a union of opposites par excellence. Only when you stop striving to become something smarter, more likable, more independent, can you begin to be fully present as your complete, undivided self. A beautiful example of this comes from Daniela's story. For years, she fell into the same cycle. Meet someone new, feel excitement, then let anxiety take over. She began analyzing every message, waiting for positive reactions to feel safe. Yet all of it left her exhausted, until one day she made what she called a decision of radical stillness. She did not withdraw from life, she withdrew from reaction. She stopped chasing connection, stopped strategizing, and each day simply practiced presence in her body, breath, heartbeat, silent space, without forcing herself to feel better, only to show up more authentically. A week passed, then two. Nothing dramatic occurred, but gradually, she realized she no longer felt turmoil when she did not receive a response. She no longer clung to every small change as if it were a lifeline. She felt clear. From that clarity, the connections that came to her no longer repeated old scripts. No tension, no struggle, because she was no longer attracted by black, but by a magnetic field of grounded presence. You may ask how to attain that presence. The answer is not in a checklist. It lies in letting go of having to do to become. Jung never taught self-improvement like a machine. He invited us to live fully as the self that already exists. He wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that becoming does not come from chasing something new, but from pausing long enough to realize you have always been here. Just be present. If this resonates, leave a single word in the comments. Present. Not as a YouTube habit, but as a reminder that you once forgot yourself somewhere and are now returning. No more chasing, no more controlling, just presence. From there, everything begins to shift, not because of what you do, but because at last you have truly become yourself. Number 7, vibrational detachment. But presence, though powerful, does not drop like a gift. It results from a deep inner discipline, a willingness to stop reacting, observe instead of controlling, and to face oneself in the silence we once tried to fill. Presence cannot live in a mind driven by anxiety. That is when you need to step into the key Jungian practice of vibrational detachment. Not to become cold, but to return to your whole self, undistracted by the need for external validation. Vibrational detachment does not mean indifference or lack of desire. It is the highest commitment that you will not betray yourself just to keep an unhealthy connection. It begins by daring to notice subtle signs that you are pursuing from an energy of lack, not because you are weak, but because you have grown accustomed to a dependent vibration. That vibration may speak for you through every message, every pause, every glance. You may have felt unable to bear a moment of silence in a relationship, each minute without a reply, sending your mind into chaos, your imagination racing, and your hand itching to act, to write something, ask a question, or check the other person's status. That is not your true nature. That is the frequency of a lack of hijacking your system. Jung warned in The Psychology of the Transference that an activated complex puts us momentarily under the control of an autonomous personality. It means our unhealed wound takes over our actions while we believe we are reacting reasonably, though we are manipulated from within. Or you may find you cannot stand not knowing what the other person thinks or feels. You constantly need confirmation signs or repeated assurances to feel safe. But that need does not arise from the present N. It arises from a hidden anxiety that has lived in you for a long time. If you find yourself easily triggered, unable to wait, always needing explanations to steady your emotions, then you are likely not loving but communicating through the vibration of lack. And the world senses it as a cry for help, even if you never speak a word. The way out of this invisible cycle lies not in more action, but in learning to stop the moment the impulse arises. The moment you want to send an unnecessary message, the moment you feel compelled to do something to hold the connection. Jung pointed out in the Red Book that in each of us, there is who we do not know who speaks to us in dreams, telling us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves. When you pause, you begin to listen to that deep part that needs no control, reaction, only presence. You can begin with a small step by doing nothing for the first 3 minutes of restlessness. Just breathe, do not touch your phone, and do not seek distractions. Then ask yourself whether you want to act because you are present or because you are afraid. That is the practice of vibrational detachment, where you act not from anxiety, but from your quiet center. Create a daily space of silence, even if just 10 minutes, with no screens, no one else, just you and your breath. In that space, whisper, "I do not chase, I do not cling, I am present." You do not need to believe it immediately, just repeat it until the new vibration imprints on your body bit by bit. And if you still return to the old question of how to be loved, then invert it and ask which part of you still does not believe you are worthy. Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Vibrational detachment is not about doing better, but about daring to live more mindfully, noticing what is happening, and choosing not to repeat it. Then when you stop chasing, stop demanding, and stop striving to be seen, a miracle begins. You become what you once sought. You no longer send signals of lack. You manipulate with fear. You no longer need someone to understand you, to feel valuable. You do not attract by strategy, sweet words, or artificial perfection. You attract by the true frequency of who you are when you are fully present and no longer denying yourself. Irradiate. Do not chase. You do not need to attract. You need to live in tune with your frequency. True radiance does not arise from effort, but from clarity in the energy of life. When you stop pursuing not only in action, but also in unconscious vibration, you no longer run toward what you want. You remain in your truth, and from that still point, you emit an irresistible field, a silence full of attraction, a state of ease that allows what does not fit to fall away and what is right to come to you. Therefore, you do not need to become someone else. You only need to return to the center of yourself. Let the stillness speak for you. Let your energy radiate before you enter a room. Let the fullness within be the unspoken call the world cannot ignore. You no longer need to be chosen because you have chosen yourself, and that is the vibration that cannot be resisted. If these insights touch the depths of your being, the desire to live authentically, to be free, and to heal from within, then do not leave, yet subscribe to continue the journey back to yourself, where you need not chase anything, because everything essential has always been within you. Have you ever tried to live as if you were already the one who has won? Not through lofty imagination, but through the way you walk in everyday life, the way you make decisions, the way you show up when no one is watching? Or are you still postponing yourself, waiting for more confidence, waiting for more certainty, waiting for some sign that gives you permission to step forward? There are moments in life when you feel you are standing very close to something. Not exactly success, not exactly failure, but a vague threshold where you know that if you continue living the same way, everything will keep repeating. And if you step to the other side, you are not sure whether you have enough courage to keep going. You call it hesitation, circumstances, timing that is not right yet. But deeper than that, perhaps this is the moment when the darkness inside begins to speak. According to Carl Jung, people are not stuck because they lack light, but because they have not yet dared to look directly at their own darkness. You may say you want to win, rise, and have a different life. But if inside there is still fear, doubt, and the habit of diminishing yourself, the unconscious will continue to lead you back to the same starting point. Not because life is unfair, but because you are still living from an old position. In this video, we will revisit the true meaning of acting as if you have already won through Carl Jung's perspective, not to escape the present, but to stop letting the past continue to lead the way. And if you are ready, let us begin. 1. Victory is not in the future. Victory, as people usually think of it, always lies ahead, at some point when you are good enough, strong enough, ready enough. We are taught that if we are patient and make a little more effort, life will open a door leading to the sense of wholeness we have always been seeking. But that very belief is the most subtle trap of the mind, because it pushes all of your vitality out of the present moment and places it into a day that has not yet come, a version that does not yet exist, a victory that has never been touched by the present. And then, while waiting for that victory, you unconsciously live like someone who has not yet begun, not yet enough, not truly present in your own life. From a Jungian perspective, this is not merely an issue of motivation or goals, but a deeper issue of psychological life. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." When you place victory in the future, you are looking outward, living in a dream of what is to come. When you return to the present, to the inner state unfolding right now, you begin to awaken. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer postpone your own life. I know a friend like this. He always believed he would truly feel confident once he reached a certain milestone in his career. A better position, a more stable income, and clearer recognition. In the present, he worked hard and was capable, yet he always spoke and acted as if he were in the preparation stage. Strangely, the more he lived in a state of preparation, the more he felt he was not enough. Each time he reached a goal, the feeling of wholeness appeared only briefly, then immediately gave way to another goal further away. Not because he was ambitious, but because his mind had become accustomed to placing his value in the future, where the unconscious could always move the milestone a little further. What Jung helps us see is this: the unconscious does not live in the future. It only knows the state you are living in right now. If you continually live as someone who has not yet won, the unconscious will register you as such, and external reality will gradually respond on the same frequency. You are not being rejected by life. You are unconsciously postponing stepping into your own position, Victory, in its deepest psychological sense, is not about achieving something new, but about no longer living as if you have not yet begun. Modern psychology also recognizes this through the concept of self-perception. People are not only guided by goals, but by how they interpret themselves in the present. When you behave like someone who is waiting, your brain and nervous system operate in a state of lack, defensiveness, and the search for validation. When you begin to live as if you already have the right to be fully present, even if circumstances have not changed, your entire inner system begins to restructure. You speak differently, choose differently, and respond differently. Not because you are pretending, but because you have stopped postponing yourself. What is important to understand is that acting as if you have already won is not self-deception, nor is it pretending to be strong or denying a difficult reality. For Jung, it is a very real inner movement. It means you no longer suspend your right to live fully on a future condition. You no longer tell yourself, "When I achieve this, then I will allow myself to feel confident, peaceful, or valuable." Instead, you begin to live as someone who has already allowed themselves to be present, even while the journey is still unfolding. You do not wait to become someone before you live. You live while you are becoming. This brings to mind a familiar image, like someone learning to swim who keeps saying they will truly relax once they get used to the water. But the longer they stand on the shore, the colder and deeper the water feels. Not because the water changes, but because the body has never had the chance to learn the sensation of floating. Only when the person accepts stepping in, even while trembling, does the body begin to adjust. Victory is not in the moment of no longer being afraid, but in the moment you stop waiting to be fearless before you begin. Thus, for Jung, victory is not a destination at the end of the road. It is an inner state that you choose to stand in right now. When you live as someone who is moving forward rather than someone who is waiting, your entire experience of life begins to change. Jung calls this the beginning of the process of individuation, where a person stops identifying with images that have not yet arrived and begins to be present as themselves in the moment of breathing, choosing, living. And perhaps the most important thing this section seeks to touch is not what you will achieve, but where you are living from a future that keeps receding, or from a present you have the courage to step into. Because the moment you stop placing victory ahead, you will realize something very strange. You have never actually lost. You have only been waiting for permission to live as someone who is already ready. 2. The unconscious determines outcomes. When you no longer place victory at a distant point in the future, when you stop waiting for a version of yourself that is good enough before being allowed to live, another question quietly emerges behind all those efforts. If it is not willpower deciding your life, then what is truly leading the way? And here, Jung takes us one layer deeper into the place where many outcomes have already been shaped before you even act, the unconscious. People often believe they live by conscious choices. We believe we choose a job because it suits us, leave a relationship because we no longer love, pursue a goal because I want it. The feeling of choice makes us believe we are holding the wheel. But Jung saw a quieter and far more difficult truth. Willpower is only the surface, while the true direction of life is often set by drives we have never looked directly at. You act not only because of what you want, but also, and often more so, because of what you have long been accustomed to being. The unconscious, from Jung's perspective, is not a dark storage room containing only wounds or bad parts to be eliminated. It is a living world, holding unnamed memories, emotions once ignored, beliefs formed very early, and even potentials that were never allowed to coexist. Jung wrote, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." This means the unconscious does not only pull you backward, it is also where your most vital parts are held, but only if you recognize how it is operating. The subtlety lies here. The unconscious does not speak to you in words. It does not argue, persuade, or explain. It does not send clear messages saying, "Do not do this," or "do that." It speaks through outcomes, through the times you get very close and then pull back, through different relationships that carry the same feeling, through achievements that do not bring a sense of victory. You can set very high goals, but if inside you are still accustomed to the role of someone who must strive to be worthy, you will unconsciously delay, choose the wrong timing, or repeat choices that make you smaller. Not because you are weak, but because the unconscious always leads you back to what is familiar, where it believes it is safe, even if that place no longer nourishes you. Imagine the unconscious as the rudder of a boat, and your will as the one rowing. You can row very hard, very diligently, even to exhaustion. You can learn new techniques, change your rhythm, and change how you hold the oar. But if the rudder keeps turning in the same old direction, the boat will continually drift to the same shore. You think you lack strength, determination, and discipline, but in truth, you are only rowing against the direction the rudder has already set. And because the rudder is behind you, you rarely see it until you realize you have arrived at the same old dock once again. Jung called these clusters of intense recurring emotional experiences complexes. A complex does not need you to believe in it to operate. It does not need your consent. It only needs to be triggered. For example, someone who grows up in an environment where they must always strive to be recognized may carry a deep belief that their value is tied to achievement. When they succeed, it does not feel enough, because success lasts only briefly. When a small failure occurs, they collapse intensely, because the feeling of "I am not enough" immediately resurfaces. Their willpower may be strong, but their life outcomes revolve around tension, exhaustion, and the feeling of never arriving. Not because they choose this, but because the unconscious has decided the stage on which every play unfolds. This also explains why many people achieve what they want, yet still do not feel victorious. What they achieve does not reach what is truly lacking inside. The unconscious does not care whether you achieve a goal. It cares about the state you are living in. If inside you are still someone who must strive to be worthy, then even if circumstances change, the lived experience remains the same. You can change roles, contexts, and people around you, but the dominant feeling does not change. Jung did not call this personal failure. He did not see it as a fault or weakness. He called it an invitation to turn inward, not to control or fix the unconscious, but to recognize where it is leading you. According to Jung, what you do not make conscious will continue to determine your life like fate, not to punish you, but to force you to look. The crucial moment is not when you try harder. It is when you begin to realize that repeated outcomes do not come from circumstances or other people, but from an inner pattern quietly holding the wheel. When you pause long enough to observe instead of react, when you stop asking, "How do I change the result?" and begin asking, "Who is choosing this path?" something begins to shift. From here, another process opens, quiet, undramatic, without requiring you to become a different person. You simply begin to listen to what is truly leading you. And when the rudder is gradually seen, the boat no longer needs stronger rowing. It only needs to turn. 3. Changing your position in life, where you stand, determines what is allowed to happen. When you no longer place victory in a distant future, when you stop waiting for a version of yourself that is good enough before being allowed to live, another question quietly arises behind all those efforts. If it is not willpower or surface effort, then what truly determines what is allowed to happen in your life? Here, Jung does not continue pushing us deeper into analyzing causes, but moves us into another layer of lived experience, where the question is no longer why, but where am I standing? Most people do not realize that many outcomes in life do not come from what they do, but from where they are living from inside while doing it. There is a profound difference between living as someone waiting for life to begin and living as someone who has truly stepped into their life. On the outside, these two states may look similar, still working, loving, setting goals, and moving forward step by step. But internally, they create two entirely different currents. Someone living in a waiting state often carries a quiet belief that their real life will begin later, after they are more stable, after they are good enough, after some additional conditions allow them to be fully present. As a result, their present feels like an extended waiting room. They are there, but they do not place their full weight into it. They live, but always hold something back, as if they do not dare to fully enter their own space. By contrast, someone who has stepped into their life does not need another milestone to grant themselves permission to exist. They are no more certain, no more perfect, or no better at controlling the future than anyone else. But they are here, and they live from that position. That presence, not effort, begins to change how life responds to them. Carl Jung wrote a very short sentence that cut straight to the core of this shift. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest privilege of a lifetime is not achieving something, but daring to stand in the right place within your own life. Many people live their entire lives in a standby position without realizing it. No one pushes them aside, but they grow accustomed to standing behind, yielding space, thinking it is not yet their turn. Over time, they no longer call this a position, but a personality, a fate. This is just how I am. From that position, everything they touch carries the same feeling, not truly belonging. A channel follower once shared that for many years, she felt her life was happening somewhere else. At work, she performed well, but rarely stepped into the center. In relationships, she was present, but never demanded. She was not unhappy, but she was not living either. Her dominant feeling was standing on the sidelines, watching others step into their lives. The change did not come when she tried harder or learned new skills. It came when she realized something painful but true. She had become accustomed to living as someone who does not take up space. From the moment she began standing more upright in familiar situations, expressing what she thought without pulling back, and making decisions without apologizing first, the way life around her responded changed clearly. Not because she became someone else, but because she stood in a different position. Changing your position in life is not about doing something grand or dramatic. It does not require overturning your life or declaring a new identity. It often begins quietly, in very ordinary moments. You stop automatically diminishing yourself in habitual phrases. You stop over-explaining choices that are clear to you. You allow yourself to enjoy a good moment without reminding yourself that I do not deserve it. When you stand in the position of someone who is always waiting to be enough, you will always find reasons to delay. When you stand in the position of someone who has stepped in, you do not need to force the current. What fits begins to reach you. What no longer fits naturally falls away. Not loudly, not dramatically, but precisely. At its deepest level, life does not require you to prove your worth. It only responds to where you are standing. If you stand outside, life continues to pass by. If you step in, life begins to treat you as someone who is living. Perhaps the greatest freedom lies not in changing circumstances, but in stopping yourself from standing in the wrong place within yourself. If in these lines you recognize a familiar but narrow position you have occupied for too long, leave a comment. I choose to change my position in life. Sometimes simply daring to step into a different place within yourself is enough for the entire current of life to begin shifting. 4. When the inside changes, the outside changes. From that point, when your inner position has shifted, outer life begins to respond. What once repeated no longer holds the same pull, and familiar outcomes gradually lose their inevitability. From here, the relationship between inner life and circumstances becomes clearer than ever. This does not happen as a dramatic turning point, nor does it arrive as a clear reward you can point to and name. It feels more like a change in rhythm. The pace of life slows where it was once tense and becomes clearer where it was once vague. You no longer feel the need to do something more, to force life to change, but you begin to notice that the way life responds to you is no longer the same. Not because circumstances suddenly favor you, but because you are no longer standing in the old position to receive them. Most people are accustomed to viewing life from the outside in. We believe that if the environment changes, our feelings will change. If others treat us differently, then we can live differently. Jung approached this from the opposite order. He believed that external experience is rarely the starting point. It is usually the result of how we are present, how we experience ourselves, and how we are standing in life without realizing it. When that position does not change, circumstances merely change form to continue reflecting the same inner structure. Perhaps you have experienced this. You change jobs, hoping to escape old pressure, but after some time, the familiar tension returns. You enter a new relationship hoping it will be different, but you still find yourself repeating the same role. What misleads us is that we think we are facing an external problem, when in fact, internally, we are still living from the same position. When that position has not changed, life is simply doing its job, presenting familiar situations so you can continue confirming how you have grown used to living. From a psychological perspective, this is how the unconscious seeks stability. For the unconscious, what is familiar feels safe, even when it hurts. Therefore, if inside you are accustomed to striving to be accepted, life will continually create circumstances that force you to strive. If inside you are accustomed to waiting for others to change, the world will continually place you in a waiting position, not because life intends to punish you, but because it remains loyal to the inner structure you carry each day. Imagine always walking on a road with a guarded mindset because you are used to believing something will make you stumble. Even if the road is repaired to be smoother, you still walk slowly, still tense, because the sense of danger already exists inside you. Only when that mindset changes, when you stop walking in familiar fear, does the way you walk on the same road truly change. Your inner state determines whether you walk in caution or in trust. Jung wrote a very short sentence that touches the core of this relationship. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. This applies not only to relationships between people, but also to the relationship between you and life itself. When you change your inner position, the chemical reaction between you and the world changes as well. And when that reaction changes, neither side can remain the same. At first, these changes may be difficult to notice. It may simply be that you no longer react as sharply as before. A situation that once made you tense now only causes you to pause and observe. A remark that once hurt you no longer strikes as deeply. Yet these small shifts are precisely the signs that your inner position has changed. And when that position changes, the chain of reactions that follows cannot remain the same. Many people wait for a major sign to believe they are on the right path. But according to Jung, true transformation often unfolds quietly. It does not require immediate achievements to prove it. It is recognized through feeling less strained, less defensive, and less dependent on the world's validation. When you no longer live to resist life, life no longer needs to constantly test you. To practice this, all you need to do is prevent yourself from falling back into the old position when familiar situations arise. No need to analyze, no need to fix yourself to be right. Simply do not act from fear, defensiveness, or the rush to prove. One small choice made from presence is enough to shift the old trajectory. When the inner position changes, what once repeated externally gradually loses its pull. At the deepest level, this section is not about changing the world, but about you no longer living in a place that forces the world to keep testing you. When the inside changes, the outside does not need to make an effort to change along with it. It simply continues doing what it has always done, honestly reflecting the person you are choosing to become. 5. Inner discipline and the shadow. When inner movements become clearer, you not only see what you want to become, but also begin to notice the parts you once avoided. From here, the journey cannot continue without another capacity, inner discipline, the ability to stay with your own darkness without running away. At this stage, the question is no longer how you want to live, but whether you are steady enough to look directly at what is quietly living within you. Jung called these parts the shadow, not to label them as evil, but to refer to aspects you have pushed out of the image you want to believe about yourself. These may include suppressed anger, denied envy, or a need for control hidden beneath tolerance. These parts do not disappear when you do not acknowledge them. They are pushed into a corner of the psyche, where the more they are avoided, the more they seek expression in uncontrollable ways. As a result, many people believe they have moved beyond them when in reality, they are only avoiding them more subtly. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The shadow is not the problem, avoiding it is. When disowned parts are not brought into consciousness, they do not disappear. They quietly influence your reactions and choices. Therefore, inner discipline is not about forcing yourself to be positive or controlling yourself, but about staying with uncomfortable emotions when they arise, without reacting impulsively or hiding them. When the shadow is seen, it gradually loses its grip, and you begin living from awareness rather than unconscious habit. In everyday life, this becomes very clear. Someone who constantly forces themselves to remain calm may explode over something very small. Someone who always appears tolerant may carry long-held resentment without realizing it. Someone who believes they are purely rational may be the most strongly driven by emotion, not because they are bad, but because their shadow has never been consciously addressed. Inner discipline here is not about controlling emotions to look good, but about recognizing emotions as they arise, understanding what is operating beneath them, and not allowing them to automatically turn into behavior. The key difference between inner discipline and repression lies in the level of awareness. Repression is an attempt not to see. Inner discipline is seeing clearly, without being swept away. You can recognize envy within yourself without turning it into behavior that diminishes others. You can notice anger without unleashing it on a relationship. You can become aware of a desire to control without allowing it to dictate decisions. When these impulses are brought into the light of awareness, they gradually lose unconscious power. The paradox is that the more honest you are with your shadow, the less it controls you. Many people confuse discipline with rigidity. They believe that tightening themselves further, adding rules, goals, and standards, will solve everything. But Jung warned that behavioral discipline, when separated from inner discipline, easily becomes a subtle form of escape. You stay busy to avoid facing emotions. You strive for perfection to avoid seeing vulnerability. You comply to avoid acknowledging inner conflict. Surface discipline is like repeatedly repainting a wall to hide cracks, while inner discipline involves strengthening the foundation. One creates temporary stability, the other builds lasting solidity. When inner discipline is properly placed, your relationship with the shadow fundamentally changes. The shadow is no longer an enemy to be destroyed or a secret to be hidden. It becomes an inner signpost, quietly indicating where boundaries are lacking, where listening is missing, and where vital energy is being misdirected. When you learn to read these signals rather than fight them, depth of character naturally forms, not because you become perfect, but because you no longer need to split yourself to maintain an ideal image. Thus, this section is not about becoming a better person by external standards, but about becoming a more real person. Someone courageous enough to face what is difficult to accept, and disciplined enough not to be ruled by it. When you can stay with yourself in the most uncomfortable moments, you no longer need to escape through busyness or hide behind perfection. From this honesty, a new inner order is established, grounded not in fear, but in awareness. If what has been shared resonates with what you are thinking, share this video with someone you believe is also navigating a phase of confronting difficult, unspoken parts of themselves. Sometimes, offering the right perspective at the right moment not only helps others, but gently reminds us that the shadow is not something to eliminate, but something to understand in order to live more fully with ourselves. 6. True victory is living in alignment with your true self. But stopping at seeing and managing the shadow is still not enough. After all these realizations, another question quietly appears, not loud but impossible to avoid. Where is this entire journey leading you? When old reactions no longer pull you blindly, you begin to realize that what you were truly seeking was never better self-control, but living from an inner axis that is no longer divided. From this point, the meaning of victory begins to change. At this stage, your perception of life shifts subtly. Things that once excited you no longer exert the same pull. Goals once seen as destinations now feel muted, not because you lack motivation, but because they no longer touch what is deepest within. You may still achieve success and recognition, yet a sense of wholeness does not appear. There is a faint but persistent emptiness, as if you are on the right path but not fully within it. Carl Jung believed this is not a sign of weakness or ingratitude, but a signal that you are living off-center from your inner core. When outer life develops faster than inner life, people fall into a state of successful but not living. You can go very far, yet not know what you are going for. Jung did not view human life as a race to surpass others. He saw it as a journey of becoming oneself in a whole and integrated way. In that journey, victory is not about having more than others, but about whether you are living in agreement with your true self. When important choices repeatedly go against the inner voice, success eventually becomes a burden. It requires maintaining an image, playing a role, and hiding parts that do not fit external expectations. Conversely, there are phases that from the outside appear as losses, an opportunity not pursued, a relationship ending, a detour that makes others doubt. But at a deeper level, these are necessary shifts for leaving old roles and returning to your true inner axis. Jung described this redirection with a short but powerful line: "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Victory, in this sense, does not awaken the ego, it awakens the true self. Consider the journey of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years of imprisonment, he emerged with a decisive choice: not to let hatred shape who he became. Mandela once said that if he carried resentment upon his release, he would still be imprisoned spiritually. Political power, global respect, and historical stature were not the starting point, but the result of maintaining his inner axis under the harshest conditions. He did not allow circumstances to force him into becoming someone else, and that created a form of victory that was quiet, yet profound. In everyday life, living out of alignment with the self does not usually cause immediate major crises. It manifests more subtly: unexplained fatigue, a sense of emptiness even when everything seems fine, a constant underlying tension from having to adjust yourself to fit your surroundings. Not because you are doing too much, but because you are living within a misaligned image. You must control reactions, edit emotions, and continually ask, "What will others think?" True victory is not gaining another title or conquering another milestone. It is gradually reducing the need to perform roles. When you live in alignment with your true self, decisions may be slower, but they are more solid. Saying no becomes easier because you are no longer afraid of losing an image. You no longer need to prove your value through immediate results. This path is not easy. Living in alignment with the self often requires accepting loss, losing attractive opportunities that do not fit, losing relationships that exist only when you play old roles, even losing a familiar image of yourself. Jung believed this price is necessary for wholeness. If you do not willingly let go of what no longer fits, life will do it for you, often through events that force you to stop. To return to yourself, sometimes all you need is to pause and ask, is this choice being guided by fear or by inner agreement? No need to answer immediately, no need to judge. Simply recognizing the question creates a small but crucial shift. Each time you choose more honestly in alignment with yourself, even quietly, you lay another brick for the most sustainable form of victory in your life. If what has been shared resonates with you, share this video with someone standing at a similar crossroads. Sometimes, the right perspective at the right moment not only eases confusion for others, but gently reminds us that the greatest victory is not becoming someone else, but having the courage to become yourself. Act from the position of someone who has already won. This statement is not about what you have achieved, but about where you are standing internally when making a choice. It does not call for blind optimism, nor does it suggest believing everything is already fine. From Carl Jung's perspective, this is a fundamental shift. You stop living from lack, stop letting unconscious fear drive behavior, and begin to be present from the self, where you no longer need to prove your value through external results. Jung pointed out that the unconscious always organizes life around the inner state you carry. When you stand in agreement with yourself, the outer world begins to respond differently, not because you force it to change, but because you stop approaching life from fear. Results may not come immediately, but you will sense a new order, less strain, less confusion, and less need to chase standards that do not belong to you. Perhaps the deepest victory is not who you become in the eyes of the world, but that you no longer abandon the person you are becoming. Have you ever been around someone whose words sounded friendly, but something inside you quietly said, something's not right? A faint discomfort, like a breeze brushing past, but just enough to make you wary. Maybe it was a smile that didn't feel real, eyes that seemed to drift away, a kind gesture that, instead of lifting you, left you feeling drained. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds to explore the human psyche, called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge. It holds our negative emotions, old wounds that haven't healed, and the darker corners of our souls we keep hidden. But here's the thing, the shadow doesn't stay silent. It always finds a way out, often revealing itself in how we treat others. When someone has unresolved feelings toward you, jealousy, resentment, or a sense of inferiority, they might manage to cover it up. But the shadow can't fake it. The signs slip through. Small, subtle things, but enough to make you feel something's off. In this video, I'm going to share 10 subtle but telling signs that someone close to you may secretly be working against you, even if, on the surface, they seem perfectly kind. Pay close attention to sign number 10. It's the one most people overlook, yet it often reveals the truth more clearly than words ever could. Number 1. Contempt disguised as irony. Carl Jung once said, "Shame is a soul-eating emotion. Not all wounds come from yelling or intense arguments. Some arrive more gently, subtle, and elusive, hiding in what sounds like a harmless joke. Things like, "You read psychology books too? Wow, that's unexpected." Or, "Feeling confident, huh? Looks like you're ready to be the boss." They sound light-hearted, even friendly. But if you pay attention, they often hit right where you're trying to grow. Your appearance, your career, your confidence, the quiet efforts you don't always talk about. That's no longer humor, that's disdain disguised as laughter. People often use sarcasm to attack without having to take responsibility. They throw a dart, then step back and say, "I was just joking." It becomes even more damaging when it comes from people close to you, longtime friends, close co-workers, family, and the ones who know your weak spots best. When they use that knowledge to make jokes, the pain goes deeper. And because the relationship feels too close to confront, you force a smile, let it go, and silently carry the weight. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their soul." When someone is carrying insecurity, jealousy, or dissatisfaction, they don't dare admit. They project that darkness onto others. One of the easiest ways to do that while still appearing nice is through sarcasm, through jokes with intention. Picture this: a single mom, juggling work and parenting, finally makes it to a rare gathering. Her friend, always polished and put together, tilts her head, smiles and says, "No makeup today? Guess you're going for that effortless, I don't care look." Everyone laughs. You laugh too. But inside, something turns cold and hollow. You know that wasn't a joke. It was a message. That you're falling behind, looking messy, and you're supposed to know it. The problem with sarcastic remarks is that they're not harsh enough to push back against, but just sharp enough to wear you down. The more you hear them, the more you begin to believe them. You start thinking, maybe you aren't good enough. You grow quieter. Stop sharing. Stop expressing joy or dreams, afraid they'll be turned into jokes. So what should you do? First, observe. Every joke leaves a trace. Take a step back and ask yourself, do these comments repeat? Do they always hit the same spot? And most importantly, how do I feel after hearing them? Then, allow yourself to be honest about how you feel. If it hurts, trust that. There's a reason for it. And when you feel clear enough, you can gently say, "I know you meant it as a joke, but to be honest, that comment made me feel a bit uncomfortable." How they respond will show you everything. Someone who respects you will understand. Someone who hasn't dealt with their own shadow will repeat the same joke and blame you for being too sensitive. In the end, the most important thing is this: you don't have to laugh when you're hurting inside. Don't let yourself become the easygoing one in a relationship where there's no respect. Because as Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And no one has the right to take that from you, not even the people closest to you. If you recognize yourself in these words, then you've already done the most important thing. You've started to see the shadow, not far away, but right within the closest relationships in your life. And that is the first step on the journey back to who you truly are. Number 2, subtle sabotage. And sometimes, sarcasm isn't even the worst part. What's more unsettling is when the hostility no longer shows up in words, but slips into actions, quiet, repeated, and always arriving at the moments you need support the most. That's when subtle sabotage begins to speak. Subtle sabotage is a form of hidden hostility that's hard to detect because it doesn't come through confrontation. Instead, it shows up as accidents, forgetfulness, or honest mistakes that seem innocent on the surface, leaving no clear blame. But once you start noticing a pattern, when these things keep happening, always at key moments. You can no longer dismiss them as coincidence. Imagine you're preparing for an important presentation. Your closest friend, who knows how many weeks you've spent preparing, promises to help print out the documents that morning. But right before the deadline, they call and say they forgot. No sincere apology, no sense of urgency, just a strange calmness. You scramble to fix things, and the presentation ends up lacking. They show up later, pat you on the shoulder, smile, and come on, it's nothing. You'll do better next time. If it happened once, you might let it go. But if it's the third time, if it always happens right when you're about to move forward, if that person always seems to mess up or forget at the moments you need them most, then you need to ask yourself, could it be that they're quietly sabotaging you in ways no one can accuse them of? A subtle saboteur doesn't have to openly dislike you. On the contrary, they might still congratulate you, share your posts, and clap for your milestones. But deep down, there's a part of their shadow that hasn't been acknowledged, the part that feels threatened by your growth, that can't stand seeing you rise while they remain stuck. And that shadow finds ways to interfere, not through words, but through action, or more precisely, through mistakes that come dressed as accidents. Carl Jung called this the projection of the shadow. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. For someone carrying feelings of inferiority, your failure becomes a kind of emotional balance for their inner world. And sometimes, they'll create that failure without even realizing it. An old classmate once shared her story with me. She worked at the same company as her best friend from university. They started from the same place. But when she began getting promoted to team leader, that friend who had always been close suddenly started submitting work late on the projects she managed. When asked, the friend always had an excuse. I was busy. I forgot. I thought the deadline was next week. At first, she didn't want to doubt her. But after nearly a year, those delays had caused her to be seen as unreliable. She lost her chance to become a manager, and that same friend said nothing but was later the one chosen to take her place. Have you ever been in a situation like that? Has a friend ever forgotten to send a referral for you at just the moment you needed it most? Has a family member told you to wait a little longer when you were about to leap into something new? Has a coworker ever given you the wrong meeting time, making you show up late? These things aren't big enough to be crimes, but they're just enough to slow you down, push you back, or make you look bad. The solution isn't to confront or become suspicious of everyone. It's to observe, look at the pattern, the timing, and the impact. Do these things repeat? Do they always happen when you're on the verge of progress? Do they make you feel smaller, make you stop sharing, or stop expecting support? If the answer is yes, then it's time to reset your expectations in that relationship. Don't expect support from someone who consistently accidentally slows you down. Don't put your important plans in the hands of someone who's let you down at the last minute before. Kindness does not equal reliability, and forgetting is not always innocent. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But if that reaction keeps making you shrink, maybe it's time to end the experiment." Number 3. Silent competition. A truly close person will be happy when you're happy. They're not only by your side when you fall, but also the ones who applaud you when you stand back up and keep moving forward. But not every relationship is like that. Some people will never say it out loud, but each time you take a step forward in life, they feel like they're falling a step behind, and instead of acknowledging that feeling, they choose to compete. Not open, fair competition, but a quiet contest, full of subtle comparisons, lingering tension, and silent resistance. Silent competition rarely begins with a clear declaration. It starts with small reactions. You share your joy, they change the subject. You talk about something you've achieved, they mention something bigger they just happen to accomplish too. You excitedly share a new experience, and they quickly point out that they did it a long time ago. And just like that, every time you open your heart, you feel it being shut down. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." People who constantly compete in silence are often in an internal struggle with their sense of inadequacy that they don't want to admit. When they see you shining, it doesn't just make them uncomfortable, it reminds them of the things they've never dared to chase or have failed to achieve. And rather than face that pain, they choose to fight back by linking every one of your accomplishments to something of their own. On a subconscious level, they're trying to balance the scale of self-worth within themselves. I once had a friend like that in the creative world. Every time I shared something I was proud of, a new idea or positive feedback from a client, she always had a story that was somehow better. But strangely, these stories had never come up before. Each one seemed like a coincidence, but always arrived at the exact moment I had just finished something that brought me joy. Over time, I stopped wanting to share. My joy got twisted. Achievements began to feel like a burden within the relationship. Have you ever been in that situation? Has someone ever made you feel like you had to hold back your happiness just to avoid triggering a silent competition? Have you ever felt the need to hide your success because you were afraid it would make the other person uncomfortable? So, what can you do about this kind of relationship? First, try pausing the habit of sharing meaningful things with them and observe. If they don't ask, don't notice, or don't care, maybe the bond wasn't what you thought it was. Then, acknowledge that not every close relationship is a safe space for you to shine. Some people stay in your life not to lift you, but to remind you to stay small. They don't want to see you rise, because that forces them to look at where they've stayed stuck. And finally, understand this. You are under no obligation to shrink yourself just so someone else can feel more comfortable. If someone can't be happy with your success, that's not your fault. Sometimes, you need to stop sharing to protect your peace. But in the long run, you need to be selective about who's walking with you and who's just standing next to you to keep score. Number 4. Superficial support. The longer you stay in a quietly competitive relationship, the more you begin to notice something else. Not everyone who claps for you truly wants to see you succeed. Some congratulations come at just the right time. Some words of support sound perfectly crafted, but behind them is a cold emptiness. That's when you begin to recognize another form of hostility, one quieter, but no less painful: false kindness. False kindness is when someone says the right things and does what they're supposed to do, but lacks the one thing that gives actions meaning: genuine feeling. It's the flat-toned congratulations, the half-hearted hug at your success party, the absence that appears just when their presence would have meant the most. And if you pay attention, this kindness always seems to arrive in just the right dose, in just the right role, at just the right moment, but never crosses the line into true care. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." Though he was speaking of families, the spirit of that insight applies to all close relationships. When someone hasn't lived the life they longed for, they can easily diminish the value of others. especially when those others are living in alignment with their true path. False kindness, then, is not always malicious deception. More often, it is a defense mechanism of someone hiding jealousy or disappointment they don't dare admit. I once witnessed a striking example of this. A woman opened a small coffee shop after years of working for others. Her best friend, who had always said she would support her to the end, showed up for the opening, took photos, and posted glowing compliments on social media, and then disappeared. Never came back, never shared another word, and whenever the cafe owner brought up her business, the friend would only say, flatly, "Must be exhausting." No criticism, no sarcasm, no wrongdoing, but the deliberate silence spoke volumes. Have you ever been in that situation, when you excitedly shared a breakthrough and the other person simply liked the post and said nothing? When you needed encouragement, all they replied was, "You'll be fine," without asking anything more. When you were disappointed, they vanished. When you succeeded, they showed up only to maintain appearances. You feel guilty for questioning it, because on the surface, they're still kind, but inside, there's an emptiness that grows a little more with every performance of support. How do you recognize true kindness? It shows up without needing an invitation. It comes with eyes that truly light up when they congratulate you. It stays with you not just when you're down, but even when you're standing taller than they are. Real kindness doesn't come from playing a role. It comes from an emotional connection. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. So what should you do in these kinds of relationships? Start by no longer measuring someone only by polite words or surface-level gestures. Pay attention to how you feel around them. Who makes you feel safe, like you can fully be yourself? And who makes you feel like you always have to perform to keep the peace? Genuine presence doesn't need many words, but it always leaves behind a sense of being supported. And above all, don't let indifference disguised as politeness make you question your worth. Someone's inability to celebrate you doesn't mean you're not worthy. It might simply mean that your light is too bright, and it's casting a shadow they can't avoid. But that's not your fault. You don't need to shrink to make others comfortable. You deserve relationships where you feel seen, heard, and valued, not just when you're struggling, but also when you're shining. Number 5, control disguised as caring. And then, some relationships go beyond shallow kindness. It's not just the absence of genuine presence, but an overwhelming presence, one that inserts itself into every small decision, all under the guise of, "I just care about you." This is when someone constantly offers advice, interferes with your choices, and always insists they only want what's best for you. But strangely, after each suggestion, you don't feel stronger. You begin to doubt yourself. You start wondering, am I capable enough? Am I doing this wrong? And slowly, quietly, without pain but very real, you begin to lose your confidence. Carl Jung once wrote, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent." Though he spoke of parents, his message applies to all relationships where one person imposes their unfulfilled desires onto another. When someone doesn't dare to live the life they truly want, they tend to control others as a way to feel they're still in control of themselves. I once encountered such a case in a work. An older colleague who always seemed enthusiastic toward new members. At first, everyone felt at ease, but after a short while, people began to notice that anyone who disagreed with him was labeled inexperienced or naive. His feedback was always delivered in a polite, gentle tone, but accompanied by a doubtful look, and always ended with a familiar phrase, "I'm just trying to help." No one dared to push back. But after a few months, 3 younger members left the team because no one felt free to create in a space that was being over-cared for. Have you ever been in a relationship like that, where someone always suggests you don't take risks, be more realistic, or listen to those with experience, but instead of feeling safe, you feel limited? When they say it's because they care, the truth is, you're slowly living out their vision, not your own. Genuine care helps you become a better version of yourself. Control disguised as care only makes you shrink to fit into someone else's mold. And if you're starting to feel that way, permit yourself to ask, am I being loved, or am I being led away from my path? Before we move on to sign number 6, we want to thank you for staying with us through the first half of this video. In every moment, there is something to learn and grow from, and your presence here, listening and reflecting with us, is a gift we deeply value. To help us share these meaningful lessons with more people, please consider liking and sharing this video. Every share is a small but powerful gesture, just like the timeless insights Carl Jung left behind. And don't forget, sign number 6 is waiting for you in the next part. Let's continue discovering and receiving these timeless lessons together. Once again, thank you for being here. Number 6. Criticism and gossip. Have you ever heard something unpleasant about yourself, coming from someone you believed was close to you? Not words said to your face, but things you happened to hear, comments passed along, remarks wrapped in the phrase, "I'm just worried about you." Talking behind someone's back is one of the clearest forms of hidden hostility. It doesn't attack directly, but it quietly erodes your image in the eyes of others, gradually isolating you without you even knowing why. The person doing it may still smile at you, still chat with you, and may even show concern for you in public. But in places where you're not present, they plant distorted information, half-truths, and stories that were never verified. Carl Jung once said, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." People who talk behind others' backs often lack the courage to face their insecurities, wounds, or envy. They can't bring themselves to speak honestly about how they feel, because doing so would mean admitting that the problem isn't with you, but within them. So they choose the easier route, tearing others down to feel better about themselves. An old friend once told me a story from her workplace. She worked hard, achieved a lot, and earned the trust of her superiors. A colleague she was very close to, the one who regularly joined her for coffee, who chatted and checked in, turned out to be the one whispering to others that she's a bit arrogant, trying too hard to prove herself, and probably just sucking up to the boss. These words weren't loud and weren't said publicly, but they were enough to shift the attitude of those around her. Slowly, she stopped receiving the support she once had. The feeling of isolation crept in quietly, and the most painful part was that it came from someone she trusted the most. Have you ever experienced that? When someone appears kind to you, but you start to notice how other people's eyes on you begin to change. When someone accidentally lets slip something deeply personal that you only shared with one person. When you hear something being said about you, and you instantly know where it came from, but that person still looks at you and smiles. Talking behind someone's back doesn't just damage your reputation, it chips away at your ability to trust. Every time it happens, you pull back a little more. You become more cautious and more guarded. Over time, you stop wanting to share anything with anyone because you're afraid your words won't stay safe in someone else's hands. If you start to see this happening, step back and observe. You don't need confrontation. Let the behavior repeat itself enough times until the truth becomes undeniable. Then one day, you'll be steady enough to walk away from that relationship, not out of anger, but because you no longer see a reason to place your trust there. Number 7. Resentment toward your success. You've just received news that you got the job of your dreams. You immediately message your best friend, the one who stood by you through all the days of applications, interviews, and anxious waiting. They reply hours later, "Congrats, that's pretty lucky." No exclamation mark, no emoji, no follow-up questions. Just a message, empty. You read it over and over. You try to convince yourself they're busy. Maybe it's just the way they text, but something inside you falls silent because you can feel something has shifted, not because of the good news, but because that good news happened to be yours. Not everyone knows how to be happy for others, especially when those others achieve something they haven't. Carl Jung once said, "The reason for evil in the world is that people are not able to tell their stories. When someone hasn't yet touched their own dream, it's easy for them to fall quiet, turn cold, or even mock the success of others. Not because they hate you, but because your success accidentally highlights what they are still missing. You tell them about your promotion, and they change the subject. You share an article of yours that went viral, and they say, "It's nothing special." You post a photo of a joyful moment with your partner, and they smile, then quietly leave the conversation. Bit by bit, you stop sharing, not because you're arrogant, but because your joy seems to make someone else uncomfortable. I once heard someone say, "I realized I needed to step back from a friendship, not because they made me sad, but because I couldn't feel joyful around them anymore." That sentence stayed with me, because sometimes relationships don't break with words, but with insincere nods and hollow congratulations. The real question is not, do they love me? But do they truly want to see me happy? And if the answer is, I'm not sure, then it's time to pause, not to cut them off, but to protect your joy. Joy is something meant to be shared, not hidden. If a relationship makes you feel guilty for being happy, then maybe it's no longer the place where your heart can safely rest. Join the conversation in our comment section. Have you experienced something like this recently? We would love to hear your story. Number 8. Hidden details, nonverbal cues. The silence that follows your success can make you doubt. But sometimes, what makes you feel uneasy isn't absence. It's a presence that arrives out of sync, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a glance that drifts away when you talk about something that makes you happy, a stiff pat on the shoulder paired with a cold hand and pressed lip. They say they're happy for you, but their body says something else. Carl Jung once said, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good. But only when we're honest about our true emotions can that highest good come to light. When emotions are suppressed, denied, or hidden, they find other ways to leak out, through things we don't consciously control. The eyes, the voice, the body. Have you ever sat next to someone and felt a strange energy? No words were said to hurt you, no actions you could point to, but you walked away from the conversation with a chill, like you'd just been with someone trying to be polite, but not truly present. That's when their body is sending signals. They're guarded, bracing themselves not to reveal how they feel, and that effort, paradoxically, makes the truth even more visible. Someone who truly cares about you doesn't have to act when you succeed. Their smile reaches their eyes. Their hand touches your shoulder without hesitation. They look at you a little longer, not to compare, but to truly see you. On the other hand, Someone carrying unresolved envy will send mixed signals. They smile at the wrong moment. They avoid your gaze when you're sharing something meaningful. They suddenly become busy, or they respond slower than usual, as if pushing through some inner resistance. I once witnessed a moment that was small but telling. During a meeting, a woman was publicly praised for her outstanding results. Everyone applauded. The man sitting next to her clapped too, but his hands barely touched. The movement was hollow, almost performative. His eyes never left his laptop. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but the person sitting across from him, their boss, noticed it all. No need for critique. The language of the shadow had spoken for itself. Have you ever felt someone's body betray their words? Heard them say congratulations, yet felt your chest tighten? Not because you didn't believe them, but because something deeper in you had already read the signal. And maybe you've also been the one who sent that signal. Maybe you've felt uncomfortable when someone moved ahead of you, even just a little. But if you're honest enough to recognize that feeling in yourself, then you're also mature enough not to pass it on to someone else. Every shadow can be transformed, as long as we stop denying that it exists. Number 9. Passive-aggressive behavior. Sometimes the signals the body sends don't stop at glances or hands. They take shape in actions, but not direct actions. Subtle gestures, slow responses, delays, just enough to keep you from moving forward, but never clear enough for you to call it out. This is when hidden hostility wears the face of passivity, a quiet rejection disguised as forgetfulness, busyness, or coincidence. They don't say, "I don't like your success," but they reply to your important message 3 days late. They don't say, "I don't want to help," but they always accidentally click the wrong button, forget the schedule, or send the wrong file. They don't confront, they delay. They don't sabotage you openly, they just slow everything down. And you, in the flow of work, of dreams, of things that need their support, suddenly find yourself standing still, and you don't know why. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Those who quietly get in the way often don't realize it themselves. Their shadow, the envy, dissatisfaction, and unresolved hurt, find subtle ways to delay someone else's success. Not because they are cruel, but because if you take flight, they'll be forced to face the fact that they are still standing. One woman once shared, "My friend always says she supports my project, but every time I ask for a simple favor, she always forgets. The first time, I understood. The second, I let it go. The third, I started to feel like I was a burden." That is the most dangerous part of passive resistance. It makes the person on the receiving end feel guilty. Have you ever been in that position? When you asked for a small favor and they said they would help, but never did, never followed up, or just forgot. When something that mattered to you was met with indifference. When you waited and waited and ended up handling it all yourself, but still couldn't complain because technically they didn't do anything wrong. The truth is, they're not wrong. They're just not ready for your progress. And they show it not through words, but through small, subtle actions, just vague enough to slip past notice, just real enough to throw you off course. The best way to deal with this kind of behavior isn't to accuse, it's to withdraw your expectations. Ask yourself, if someone keeps delaying, maybe it's not time they lack, but a genuine desire to see you succeed. And if you've got a long road ahead, choose companions who help lighten your load, not those who slow you down while smiling and saying they're here for you. And what about you? How many times have you been held back by someone who promised to help, only for you to end up carrying it all alone? Your story can be a source of reflection and inspiration for others. Share it in the comments and join the conversation. Number 10. Emotional withdrawal. And if passive behavior still feels like a half-hearted form of engagement, there is a colder kind of hidden hostility: emotional withdrawal. No harsh words, no mistakes, no odd reactions. They still text you, reply to your messages, even show up when you ask. And yet, somehow, you feel alone. You share something that's been weighing on your heart, and they respond with something reasonable: "This will pass." You tell them about a moment of joy, and they smile slightly. "That's good." You send them a song that moved you, and they leave a heart reaction, but say nothing more. Not cold, not impolite, just disconnected. Carl Jung once said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. And that is exactly how it feels to be next to someone who has emotionally pulled away, even while the form of the relationship remains intact. They don't hurt you in any obvious way. Instead, they make you question whether your feelings are even worth sharing. Are you being too sensitive? Should you keep telling this story or hold it back? And so you begin to limit yourself, speaking less, sharing less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer feel truly heard. I once witnessed a relationship that went on like this for years. They were close friends, used to share everything, but one of them began to change, not out of anger, not because of conflict, just gradually disconnecting. Conversations got shorter, meetups became forced. The other person was still there, but only as a shell, a presence without presence. And eventually, the one who was trying to hold on had to admit, "I can't hold this relationship on my own anymore." Have you ever felt that? Like you were talking to yourself, even though the other person was technically responding? Like you needed something more, but didn't dare ask for it, afraid of seeming like you expected too much? You realize the relationship still exists, but it's already empty. Not everyone who creates distance hates you, but if that distance makes you feel invisible, unseen, unfelt, then it's time to be honest with yourself. Can you still be your true self in this relationship? Because sometimes silence is the clearest voice of a heart that's no longer with you. And the bravest thing isn't holding on to a relationship for as long as you can, but knowing when to let go because it's no longer real. We grow up believing that the people closest to us will always be there, always supportive, always loving. But the reality is often more complicated. Some relationships that seem close are actually where hostility hides behind concern, where jealousy wears the mask of congratulations, and where the deepest wounds come from those who never say a word. Carl Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." Maybe the people who exhaust you the most are not your enemies, but unconscious mirrors, reflecting the parts of yourself you haven't yet faced. But you don't need to call anyone out. Sometimes growing up simply means withdrawing expectations, saving your presence for those who deserve it, and trusting your intuition. Because if your heart quietly whispers, "This is no longer a safe place," maybe it's telling the truth. And if you've seen yourself in any of these signs, remember, you are not alone. You're simply stepping out of an old shell and becoming a stronger, more honest, and freer version of yourself. And so we arrive at the end of tonight's journey into the depths. As Jung reminds us, the work of understanding ourselves continues in sleep, where the unconscious speaks in the language of dreams. Let these ideas settle into your mind as you drift. There is no need to hold on to them, no need to remember. Simply allow yourself to sink into rest, trusting that the psyche does its work in darkness as much as in light. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to Jung at Night. More explorations into Jungian wisdom are coming soon, each one a companion for your nights of rest and reflection. Thank you for spending this time exploring the inner world. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be revealing, and your awakening be gentle. Until we meet again, good night.